So my name is Michael, and what I want to do in this video is talk about something called the right to repair movement, or the right to repair legislation, whatever words you want to use on this. Now, this is a movement that is aiming to force manufacturers like Apple and Google and Sony and Asus and all these other companies to create products that are designed with repair in mind, and to stop impeding independent repair, whether that is, an individual like you or me, or an independent repair shop, from fixing devices that need to be fixed. So what's happened over the past decade or so is many of the products that we use, whether that's a laptop or desktop or even tractors, like John Deere tractors, they are designed to be less and less repairable. They are designed that if you need something to be fixed, you have to go back to the manufacturer and have the manufacturer do it, which honestly is not a good thing, especially when it creates more downtime and it's more expensive for the end user oftentimes, and it creates a lot more environmental waste. So what this movement is trying to do is to force those manufacturers to create products that are more repairable, and then also to make parts and the guides available so that someone who wants to repair the device could do so, provided that he could get the part, right? So this is something that is a very, very important thing to push for, in my opinion. Now, I am a free market capitalist. I strongly believe in the power of the free market and in the economy and the autonomy of businesses. However, I also strongly believe in the rights of consumers and protecting from unnecessary e-waste. So I think this is something that is extremely important that we need to push for. But let's talk about why this right to repair movement is so important. So based on the estimates that I've read here, we produced about 50 million metric tons of e-waste, of electronics waste every year. And that's almost scary. That's a lot of trash being thrown away. Now that's, according to the estimates that I've read here, about 1,000 laptops every second being thrown away. So just think about that. 1,000 laptops every second. That's crazy. Now I'm thinking, okay, well, what can we do to reduce that? Now, I'm not some kind of green environmentalist guy. I believe that we should be good stewards of the planet that we've been given. And one way to do that would be to hopefully reduce how much we're throwing away. And one way to do that would be to make what we have more repairable. And unfortunately, many of our devices are designed to be thrown away when they break. They're not designed to be fixable. But what if they were designed to be fixable? And that's something that this right to repair movement is designed to do. It's designed to encourage and even force manufacturers to make their devices more repair friendly, so that if, for example, the SSD in your MacBook Pro fails, well, is that repairable at a reasonable cost, or are you looking at just buying a whole new machine and throwing away the old one? Or if your screen breaks, can you repair the laptop by getting a new screen off of eBay or whatever source you want to use, and still keep using that machine for many more years to come? Now, I've got an old ThinkPad. It's an E-series ThinkPad back behind me, and it works just fine. But it's an old machine. It's probably about 8 or 9 years old. But I've replaced that old hard drive with an SSD, and I've upgraded the RAM in it to the maximum that it can use, and it works great. I mean, it's not a very fast computer for sure, but it runs Windows 10, and it works great for web browsing and for word processing, and it's great. But if I weren't able to replace those parts, then it would be part of the landfill now. It would be in some e-waste pile, taking up space and rotting and leaching chemicals into the environment, which is a lovely thought. But since I was able to replace those parts, it's now still in service and works great. Let's also take a look at this from a cost savings and just economics perspective, right? So let's just say, for example, that you have a laptop in your backpack and you're walking out to the car, and in the driveway, there's a bunch of ice that you didn't see. You slip and fall in the ice, and you fall backwards on the backpack, and you break your laptop screen. I've done that. It hurts. Don't do that. But what would you do at that point? Well, if you have an accidental damage protection warranty, then obviously go ahead and use that, because then Dell or Apple or whoever would be replacing the screen for you at their cost, essentially. Now, of course, if you have an Apple machine, then you'll be paying a small fee to get AppleCare to cover that, of course, but that's not a really big deal in the grand scheme of things, I suppose. But if you don't have a warranty, then what do? You can contact the manufacturer, like Dell, and just say, well, hey, Dell, I've broken my laptop screen. I fell in some ice, and I know it's just a screen that's broken. Can you replace that for me? And typically what they'll want you to do is to send the machine into them to have them inspect it, and then they'll call you or email you with a quote, which you can then accept or reject, and then they'll either fix your machine after you pay them, or they will send it back to you depending on what you've chosen. But what if you could just buy the part for yourself? What if you could just, go on eBay or Amazon, or even better yet, Dell's website, and buy a new screen for your machine and install it yourself, including a guide there that shows you exactly what to do? Wouldn't that be way better? I think it would. And you could possibly save a lot of money by doing that over having them do it. Now, of course, that's predicated on you being able to do the repair on your own. But if you're able to, wouldn't that be a better option for you financially? I personally think it would. Now, of course, with Apple, if I were to have a failure on my MacBook Pro in year 4 or 5 or even 6 down the road, and my screen stops working, then I could have Apple replace the screen, assuming that they still work on the machine at that far out and in the future. But at that point, out of warranty, I'm looking at hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And wouldn't it be better just be able to buy a screen for myself at a fraction of the cost? Personally, I think so. The right to repair movement would also stop repairs from being prevented by software. So what Apple has done famously in several of their products is they have actually made it technologically, software-wise, largely unfeasible to replace devices or their components with even Apple genuine parts and still have the same experience. So if you were to take 2 iPhones and two brand new iPhones and go from the Apple Store and to swap the screens on them, so you take the screen off of one and put it on the other phone, both perfectly new, perfectly working iPhones, tested brand new, great. If you were to do that, what would happen? The phones would tell you that the screens are not genuine, but they're genuine. They're genuine Apple parts. But it wasn't blessed by an Apple service provider. It was not, blessed by the Apple software that says, this is an official Apple repair. And you see, that's a problem. That should not happen. I think that kind of thing is borderline criminal. Now, it's legal, of course, but I think it ought to be criminal because, how petty is that, Apple? Come on. Now, I don't want this to sound like I am bashing on Apple. I love Apple. I'm full in on the Apple ecosystem. I've got my iPhone. It's a 13 Pro Max. I'm going to get the 15 Pro Max probably when it comes out. I've got my MacBook Pro. I've got an iPad Pro. I have the Apple Watch. I'm all in on Apple services. But Apple, come on. That's just petty. Just don't lame. Don't do that. But the right to repair would prevent that kind of stuff from happening, you see. And it would make repairs accessible and possible by the average person without having to get permission from Apple or Dell or whoever else. So at the end of the day, the right to repair movement is about this. It's about empowering customers to be able to repair their own devices without needing the blessing or permission of Apple or Dell or whoever else. And I think that is a very, very important thing. And now this, of course, does not apply only to computers and tablets and phones. It also applies to things like tractors. Now, John Deere, for example, is a tractor and farm supply company. And they have famously made it very difficult for some farmers to repair their own tractors, which I think is kind of a problem considering what farmers do. And I don't know about you, but I think we don't want farmers to have any more downtime than necessary. So if they're waiting for a repair on their tractor, wouldn't it be faster for them to repair it themselves if they have the ability to do that and the will to do that? Then yeah, absolutely. We should fully empower them to do that. And that's what the right to repair movement is all about, is empowering people to make those repairs on their own with the parts and the resources and the schematics that they need to make their devices work for them without the permission of Apple or Dell or anyone else. And I think that is something that's very, very important. Now, of course, I am a free market capitalist. I strongly believe in the power of the free market economy, and I believe in business autonomy. However, there are some things here which I think we also need to consider, like the rights of the consumer, the amount of waste that's being produced by decisions by companies like Apple and other companies to solder in components like RAM and the SSDs, making these computers essentially disposable, because once those things fail, then you have to replace the entire logic board or even just replace the whole machine, which is silly when you could just previously just replace that one part and the machine's good for many more years. I think that's silly. And we ought to be pushing companies to kind of backpedal and make their devices repairable in the sense that they should last for many more years. And yes, parts will fail at times. And I've seen this over and over working in IT, that an SSD will randomly fail, or RAM will just not work for whatever reason, or even a CPU can fail. I've seen it happen. Yes, it can happen. Fans go bad, GPUs go bad, and you ought to be able to replace those without having to replace the whole computer, which can be wasteful and expensive. And if customers are enabled to replace their devices to replace those devices in their machines on their own, then how much time and money can they save, and how much stuff can we keep out of landfills? I think that is something that is strongly to be considered and ought to be, I'm not a fan of government being involved in business, but there is a time and place where maybe it's the right move at times. So I think that that's a conversation to be had. But the right to repair movement, I think, is extremely important. And if you want to get involved in this, if you want to help support it, then what you can do is contact your legislators where you are in whatever country, in whatever state you're in, and tell them that you want a movement like this. You want legislation like this where you are, to make manufacturers make their devices more repairable, and tell them that we want our devices to be repairable, and we want schematics and parts available to us so that we can repair our devices on our own. Now, yes, of course, if you are not someone who wants to repair your own device, maybe you will always go to a repair shop, then that's all good and well. But the right to repair movement is for you too, because this will give you the freedom to go wherever you choose for a repair, rather than going through the manufacturer or having to ship your machine off to some warehouse for Dell or Apple and hope that they fix the machine right and then get it back. Whereas with this, you could just go to a local repair shop, get it fixed, and then pick it up next day, and then you're good, right? So this is a very, very important thing, and I think that we all really ought to be on board with this. So hopefully this video has been helpful to you and educational on some level. But if you like this video, then please click that like button and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.